The truth is the cost can vary a lot. I've seen coffee shops set up for less than $10,000. I've seen others that cost over $1 million to get up and running. And the difference isn't gold-plated door handles and designer couches. Mostly it's got to do with boring stuff like business strategy and finance. Confused? Let me break it down so you understand how it works and what it might cost you to start a cafe business. So first up, today I'm going to be focusing on a typical neighbourhood cafe or coffee shop. So a menu that might include simple breakfast and lunch items like toasted sandwiches, avocado and toast, pastries, but nothing that requires a full kitchen. So the total cost to set up a business like this usually ends up somewhere between $100,000 and $300,000. Of course, this range depends on the size of the site and the quality you're aiming for, but it also depends on whether you choose to defer some of the costs, particularly the equipment. So let's break down these costs. There's three big components of costs when you're setting up a new cafe. There's the fit out, the equipment, and a bunch of other costs that I've creatively called other. Let's take a look at the fit out. Here I'm including design costs as well as the physical build like counters, shelving, plumbing, electrical, and also the furniture. Combined, these usually add up to around 30 to 50% of the total cost of setting up a new coffee shop. Here, let's look at a couple of examples so you can visualize what I'm talking about. Now the first one is a high-end build. They've leased a corner spot at the bottom of a brand new office building. Plenty of glass on two sides so the space is filled with natural light. The designers added white panels, timber accents, a marble benchtop and polished concrete floors. The furniture is simple, elegant, commercial timber benchtops and chairs with built-in custom banquette seats to add a bit of luxury. Now I'm going to guess that the cost of design and fit out for a space like this would be around $200,000 to $250,000. That's not including any equipment or any of the other costs we'll get to in a minute. Now, one thing to be aware of with high-end locations like this, the landlord will often provide a fit-out contribution. That is, they pay for some of the costs of the build. Now, it's usually not a huge amount, and they will generally add a clause into the lease that says you need to pay this back if you sell or close the business before the lease ends. But still, it's better than nothing. Now, the second example is a budget build. They've leased a small retail space and tried to spend as little as possible on permanent fixtures. It's a DIY approach to both design and construction. They've kept the original tile floor and fluorescent lighting and simply given the walls and ceilings a coat of paint. The counters are built from components from a local hardware store, and for the furniture, it looks like they've found a mix of old second-hand table bases and added some new plywood tops. Now, excluding equipment and other costs, I'm going to assume this is all DIY. I'm going to guess that the cost of this fit out would be around $10,000 to $15,000. Now clearly both of these businesses are very different locations and are targeting different types of customer, but either could be successful in their own way. I'll explain more about strategy in future videos, but for now, let's move on to equipment. Commercial equipment can get expensive. Take for example the super popular La Marzocco Linea PB espresso machine. It's a great machine, but it costs a cool $20,000 on its own. And of course, that's not the end of it. There's a stack of other equipment too, like grinders, blenders, toasters, dishwashers, fridges, cash register, vintage record player. I won't go through every item now. There's a typical equipment list linked in the description below if you want to take a closer look. But the total bill is often somewhere between $30,000 and $80,000 all up. So let's focus on how we're going to pay for all this kit. There's really three options for equipment finance. You can pay cash, you can lease the equipment, and for some items you can get the supplier to provide it on loan. Now there's pros and cons for each of these, which I'll take you through in a separate video. But for now, the important thing to note is that you don't necessarily have to pay for the equipment up front. By choosing a lease or loan option, you can defer some or all of these costs until the business is up and running. Naturally, there's a cost to doing it this way, but for many people, not having to find the money for equipment up front is just what they need to get started. Now the third category of costs is made up of a few items that, if you're new to business, you might not even think of. I'm talking about costs like working capital. Working capital is what accountants call the money you need to pay bills while the business is still growing. Now the big thing to budget for here is wages. At first, all the systems and the staff are new, so if you want to deliver a good experience, which you do, then you'll need to roster them on anyway, even though sales are still building. Now, over the first few weeks and months, as sales grow and your systems get more efficient, then you'll be able to bring this back into balance. Another hidden cost is upfront rent. Now the exact amount varies, but here in Australia it's common for landlords to require 1 to 2 months rent upfront, sometimes more. In addition, it's also typical for bigger landlords, like shopping centres, to require a separate bank guarantee. Of course, there are a whole lot of smaller costs that I haven't focused on today, so grab the spreadsheet in the link below if you want to dig into those details.